All right. Hey, everyone. I just wanted to come on today after I got done training to talk about two things that I wish I knew as a beginner in arm wrestling that I think would have really accelerated my progress. And those two things are rising and pronation, and how I had a major misunderstanding of them. And I figured since I had a pretty big misunderstanding of how they worked and how to train them, then you guys might as well. So hopefully what I put out here can help you out today. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is going to be rising. And when I very first started arm wrestling, the things that I knew to train based on what Devin would say would be the rising, cupping, and rolling. Cupping is pretty easy for everyone to understand, and it's a pretty easy strength for everyone to build. But rising, I just fundamentally misunderstood what it was. And then the training videos that I saw that were out there. Unfortunately, the ones that I came across just weren't effective for me. And I honestly don't think that they're probably effective for just about anyone. And that is training your rise like this as an active dynamic movement. Now, rising was my weakest strength. I mean, it still is my weakest strength, but when I very first started, the most I can do is like a static lift is 35 pounds. And after about, like 12 to 18 months, I'm not exactly sure when I remember testing it next, but I was only able to do like 37 and a quarter, 37 and a half. I don't really remember the exact number, but I know it was in the 37s. And that's the whole time I was training it like this. And I just was not seeing any progress. And, in my head, I was just thinking maybe it's just because I'm so worn out, from table practice that I'm just not able, in that muscle being small. Like I made all these excuses in my head for why maybe I was getting better on the table, but my rising wasn't progressing in the gym. So that's kind of where I ended. But it wasn't until that point where I retested and realized how little progress I made that I did a bunch of research and I found out how rising actually works, or what we call rising. So there's no specific muscle that actually individual muscle that raises your hand in this way. It's the combination of your flexors and your extensors that work together to lock your wrist in this position. And once I learned that, and then at the same time, I also happened to find Todd Hutchings and Renau Massick's YouTube pages. And seeing that the way that they train rising was all through static movements. And also Todd Hutchings being a believer in reverse wrist curls. Now, why that's important is, one, training it from a static motion is basically the way you're always going to train it or use it in arm wrestling, because I don't think I've ever seen anyone lose their rise and then gain it back. Like once your rise is gone, it's gone. So the ways that you effectively train, and the ways that my numbers actually started moving up at a acceptable rate, was training it statically. So always having a locked rise and moving through that range of motion. Now, I do think this is useful for rehab purposes, just, getting blood and fluids into the area to help let the tendons and the ligaments and soft tissues heal. But actually training for strength and performance on the table, as soon as I started training completely from a locked position, man, my rise really started going up, and it's significantly better now. The other thing that helped, like I alluded to before, is reverse wrist curls. Now, I would venture out to say that there's probably not a single arm wrestler out there that has a problem with their, flexors being weak. It's the extensors that are probably weak. Training that reverse wrist curl went a long way towards, as a matter of fact, that's when I started seeing like pretty big, like week to week, 3 to 5% increases in the amount of weight I was able to put on, while I was kind of going back through those newbie gains. So that was absolutely huge. So again, the first thing that I wish I knew was how to train rise, and that's from training rise from a locked position and using reverse wrist curls in order to build that secondary strength. Because remember, it's your flexors and extensors working together that actually lock your wrist. Now, the second thing I wish I understood was pronation. Now, I think one problem that we have in arm wrestling is we tend to use a lot of terms for similar different things. And the reason that I say pronation is because this is what I think a lot of people hear. But like I said earlier, with the whole hearing what Devin had to say, where he said rise, cup, roll. Now, rolling and pronation are actually different fundamentally in terms of the way that you train them. Now, training your pronator is always a very important aspect, so from like a fixed position and you're actively dynamically rotating your hand over in order to pronate, this will make the muscle stronger. But again, kind of like Rise, the way that we actually arm wrestle, and just kind of maybe make a little bit more sense. One issue where I thought like I didn't even attempt to train top rule, honestly, for like my first, again, like year and a half, maybe 2 years, because every time I tried to top roll, I felt like I just rotated my hand into their palm. They ended up right on top of me. I just did it for them. That's because I was trying to actively pronate, kind of like how you train it, rotating my hand and wrist into theirs. But again, the way Devin says it, rolling, and I know again we use pronation and rolling kind of interchangeably. But rolling is actually a locked pronation. So your pronation's already locked and you're rolling through. And this again is just so much significantly different than active pronation that you have to understand how you need to train it. And again, train the individual muscles. That way it can just be stronger at base through rotation is a must, but to actually see it translate on table, you also have to train it from a locked position. And even if you go and do table time once a week, I don't think that's enough. I think you should have a day, where that you dedicate to rolling. Same thing as side pressure, but we can get into that in another time. But yeah, training your pronation not only dynamically, but from that locked position like you would in a actual arm wrestling match is extremely important. And again, once I actually started actively training that fixed pronation and not just rolling my hand over and getting my hand taken instantly, that changed everything for me. I started seeing a lot of success in terms of the on the table application of the pronation strength that I built. And two, it gave me just that secondary option now in order to, if I feel like it's there, if they're really low on my hand, and, I can now roll through effectively instead of trying to pronate in and through their hands. So yeah, hopefully those two concepts, make sense and are helpful for you guys to understand, because again, they just really transformed the way that I arm wrestle. And if you have any questions down below, or if there was anything that specifically helped you guys to get better that you wish you knew earlier, or that could maybe help me or anyone else who's watching, please let us know down below. If you like what I'm doing, please like and subscribe, and I will catch you guys next time.